I think the average person's attention is actually being diverted away from what actually is the biggest danger to survival of most of the human race. Is probably the elite in the military. I would call them the elite. The secretive higher echelons in the military. Not your average person that's in a uniform. Because your average person in a uniform basically goes in a military to serve their country. Vast majority of them are very patriotic and conscientious. I think a lot of people are misconstruing what I'm saying. And I also want to point out, and you got these people like the Rothschilds, and you got the Bilderberg group, and you got the Council on Foreign Relations. I don't think they have a good handle on what's going to come up in the future. I think they know. And one reason I think they don't have a good handle on it is because they trust the Russian leadership. That's a very militant government. I won't say it's a militant country. It's a militant government. And behind the scenes, it's it's hardcore Soviet Union the way it always was. But in the United States, we got the same type of elements. This is a picture of a deep underground military base. Now, this stuff is not fiction because you know about Cheyenne Mountain and NORAD and all this type of stuff. And I was in the military, and I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't say I'm smart, but I am very well read. A lot of people in the military never like to read that much, and I used to read. Besides, working out a lot, I used to read a lot on various subjects that I always try to dig in what the real facts are. But it's true, the United States and the Soviet Union at the time has been building underground bases for some kind of worldwide, catastrophic event, more than likely like a nuclear war or some garbage like that in the future, as a contingency plan. These are the people you got to watch for. Not your average person, even the banksters. The banksters, the whole game with the banksters is this. Let me just put up another photo here. There's a NORAD blast door. Cheyenne Mountain, right? The thing is, they got a racket with the money system. And it's not so much that the money is paper. It's the fact that it has to be paid back with interest. And all money comes into creation in the form of a loan. That's the game. Even if we're on a gold standard, which wouldn't be as bad, I guess, in a way. If the bankers have all the gold and they lend it out with interest, how is that interest going to be paid back? See, that's the whole key to our original government, or original way that would be worked best for the average person, is that money should be created by Congress, coined by Congress. But say it was paper money. If it was issued free of debt, interest free, and it was paper money and it came from the Congress, or say it had interest, but the interest was going directly back into the government, which is being spent on the people, all that situation would not be anywhere near as bad as it is today, even without the gold standard. It's the fact that you got private banks. But my point is, these guys that are in these private banks and the Rockefellers and all the names out there, Carnegie Foundation, all this stuff, right? No, everybody knows their names. I don't like people getting in on these rumors because guys like, let me put it this way, David Icke is a kook. He's a kook. He's putting it out like all these people are some half-breed reptilians and stuff, and there's these other stories that reptilians live down in the earth someplace in these deep underground bases and stuff, and I heard these stories. I don't want to get into that shit because that, what I tend to do? I tend to just take concrete stuff and go with that. I don't like getting into the rumors. And yeah, if you want to look up about reptilians on the underground, you got Phil Snyder from some years ago about. He shot a couple of them, so at least that makes me feel good. So if there's reptilians, just make sure you shoot them twice, and he got hit by a ray gun. I don't know. I heard this story. I heard him talk. I heard his speech. I heard all this stuff. That guy I don't even consider as crazy as David Icke, because at least the guy was missing some fingers, so maybe he got hit by a ray gun. I don't know, man. That stuff's pretty wacky to me. I'm not going to say that there's no possibility that there's other life on the universe. I think there's concrete evidence of, I'm digressing a little bit because I want to play that there could be something to this, because the only concrete things I know is what exists today. You got the Great Pyramid of Giza. We couldn't have built that today. It's got stones in it that are, 40 tons or more that are in the center that we can't lift with a crane, can't precision place someplace. There's a million reasons that thing couldn't be built today, and it was supposedly built in 20 years. It's way too precise. There's too many measurements. You can go into a lot of detail. We couldn't have built that. There's other temples throughout the world. Some of the stones near the foundation are 100 tons, one stone. There's nothing we got that could lift that. So, I don't know. It probably wasn't humans that built that stuff. I mean, the damn thing's there today. It's not in a book. It's it's there. You can go see it. You can figure out, do people build this thing? Were they primitive people? Yeah, right. So maybe there's something to this stuff about, life in other planets or whatever the hell it is. But you can get into some really, you can go down to some rabbit holes that don't lead to nowhere. So, I mean, I'll give that. I mean, I think there's a possibility to that stuff because, well, it seems to be a dead given. Because some of the structures on Earth indicate that they weren't built by humans. That's just how it is. But I think that, the real danger you got to world, the world getting screwed up is these military kooks. And I'm not talking about the average person in the military. It's like you get into this type of operation. This is a tunnel boring machine. And supposedly there's all kinds of tunnels existing throughout the United States. It's like a map. They got Area 51 over here in Nevada, China Lake. Well, China Lake over in California, I think there is a lot of underground facilities there because that's a big weapons area. And supposedly, I read stories that there's, but it's all hearsay. I mean, I really don't know how you would get proof. And, the author's reciting a reference that you don't know who the person is. You could just be writing some bullshit down. You really don't know. But I have a tendency to think that, they didn't stop doing what they were doing all along since the 40s and 50s, since the Cold War began. And I know the Russians have underground cities all underneath Moscow. Even they have them all over their country. They have them in various parts of the world. They're in Norway. They got seed banks up there and stuff like that. This kind of stuff is when Alex Jones is, I don't know what the hell he's playing a game about, but I think a lot of this stuff needs to be looked into a lot more. This was an interesting statement. This actually goes back a little ways. Back on September 10th, 2001. This is a very important statement. That's why I'm bringing it out. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld held a press conference to disclose that over $2 trillion in Pentagon funds could not be accounted for. $2 trillion, not billion, trillion, right? That's 25% of what the Pentagon spends. So, according to some estimates, we cannot track 2.3 trillion in transactions. This was on September 10th, 2001, a day before 9/11. This guy Rumsfeld, well, you also know he's connected with Monsanto and aspartame, the stuff that causes cancer in people. He's a bad guy all the way around, no matter how you look at it. The genetically modified foods and the artificial poisons that you put in people's bodies. So if this $2 trillion was spent partially on underground military facilities, I could believe it, because where the hell did the money go, right? Really, right? I mean, if you don't know, if you can't see it, maybe it's underground, right? And, you know, like I said, this is a tunnel boring machine, and there's a Cheyenne Mountain. This is like well-known stuff. So, I mean, you know this stuff exists. But what I say is that, you know, people talk about the bankers control these people. Bullshit. Well, I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. They don't control these people. They don't. They don't control them. It's like, I don't think the military even thinks, you know, I think the type of people that are involved in this type of stuff in the military don't even think of anybody in the civilian, no matter if they kiss their ass or not, tell them what they want to hear. I don't think they think nothing of them. They probably think of them as a insect. They probably don't think a damn thing of them. You know, that's why I'd rather work with the bankers if I had an opportunity than to deal with these military Nazi fucks. Because, and I'm not saying the military in general, but when you're getting up into the high elite, that's where the criminals are. And you know, that's exactly how it was even in Germany. You know, I'll say something very controversial here, because, you know, maybe Jewish people might not want to hear this, but your average German soldier during World War II was actually very honorable for the most part. Even more so than the Allies, and definitely more so than the Russians. But at the very top, their leadership was screwed up to the max. You know, it's like when our Allied soldiers were bombing the shit out of German cities with fire bombs, and the planes were hit. You know, the planes that were doing the bombing were hit by, you know, the anti-aircraft guns from the Germans, and sometimes they had to bail out. The Germans took them as prisoners of war, and they survived the war. In other words, they gave them medical attention, and they survived the war. They didn't like torture the crap out of them because they bombed the city. It was almost like fair and fair. The average German soldier was actually okay, it was fine for the most part. I'm not saying all of them, but for the most part. It's the leadership. And we almost have that same kind of comparison in the United States. The average American soldier, Marine, and sailor in Air Force is fine. Watch out for the elite in the military. I really wouldn't know who the hell they are. The problem is, you know, this type of stuff is very secretive. But, you know, we have a good hint that a lot of money's being spent someplace and you don't know where the hell it's going to. And I'd imagine part of that is going down into underground facilities. And, you know, some of these nutcases in the military on the very top would be the ones to pull Armageddon. These are the ones you got to watch out for. You know, the Bilderbergers could be having a social function, right? And all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. That's the way I think it would play out. The bankers don't even know who the hell they're dealing with. They're idiots. That's my personal opinion, but I'd say, you know, if there's ever going to be an emphasis by a truth movement to get at what's going on, I'd sure like to know what's going on with all these underground bases and stuff like that. And, you know, they can say national security, but that's a pile of shit, because actually what I think's going on is they got something planned in the future that there's going to be a World War III at one point in time, and this is how you're going to get your depopulation real fast. It isn't going to be over some little bullshit, the stuff that Alex Jones is talking about. That's garbage. That's going to be over shit like this. It's too easy. It's too easy. And you know, I'm almost 100% sure the supposed banksters aren't involved in it. You imagine Damie Diamond going for some shit like this? You think he wants to go out of his office in New York and live in his shithole down here underground? Hell no. That's a joke and a half. You know, as bad as the banksters are, they're not as bad as these elite military people. They're like the top echelon of the Nazis. You know, and that's why I just want to make that clear on this. You know, how things really are. Even in the German army, most of the German soldiers, on average, acted very honorably. Most of them. It was the elite in the military that were the bad news. And that's kind of how the situation we have in the United States. That's why I say you don't go against your average military. And I think Alex Jones is trying to almost make people fearful of everybody that's in government and everybody that's in the military. You know, he's like a big conspiracy. Everybody's in on it. Hell no. Most of them are actually very patriotic people, more so than the average person that there was in the United States. But watch out for the elite. You got to figure these kind of people that are in this kind of shit are pretty psycho as it is, you know. You got to figure it. I mean, personally, I would actually feel, I'd sleep better at night being a Rothschild than being one of these fucking kooks. Sitting down here in an underground bunker waiting for World War III. I'd rather be a Rothschild sitting in a mansion collecting interest on money I lent to people and governments. You know? I don't, you know, they're evil too. I'm not saying they ain't, but you know what I mean? The worst one going is the military elite. And watch out for the Russian ones. The Russian ones have never departed from what their goals were from day one. It's worldwide domination by force. This kind of shit's going on throughout the world, and I don't think the bankers have control over it. I'm sure they think they do, but they're going to be left out in the cold. Watch. We'll see.